want to be upfront about today's conversation and why it's so important, and your involvement is so important. Michigan is a battleground state, and Senator Peters' race is really high profile because it's one of the only 2 Senate seats that Republicans are targeting to flip in a state that, if you remember, Donald Trump actually won in 2016. So the road to the White House, flipping the Senate and keeping our majority in the House requires that we win in Michigan. And as you know, with a Democratic majority in the Senate, we can continue to address, but also make much greater progress on the important issues that affect so many Americans, and in particular, service members, veterans, and their families. So we want to give as much time as possible to hearing from these 3 great leaders and getting into some questions about the issues that are defining this race in Michigan. So let's go ahead and introduce them now. Michigan's United States Senator Gary Peters has devoted much of his life to serving others. He served as a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy Reserve and has been ranked as one of the most effective and bipartisan members of the Senate. Retired U.S. Army Major General Greg Vadnais served as the Adjutant General of the Michigan National Guard and Director of the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs from 2011 to 2019, appointed by Republican Governor Rick Snyder. The general served as a commanding general of the 38th Infantry Division, which deployed soldiers and airmen to Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia, and as part of the Hurricane Katrina rescue effort. He's the chair of Veterans for Peters, a grassroots group of Michigan veterans who are working to send Senator Peters back for another term in Washington. And Jason Kander is a U.S. Army veteran of the war in Afghanistan who today serves as president of Veterans Community Project, a Kansas City-based organization founded by combat veterans to fill gaps in services for all veterans and provide transitional housing to end veteran homelessness. Veterans Community Project is currently in the midst of a nationwide expansion. A former Missouri state legislator and Missouri Secretary of State, Jason was the first millennial in the nation elected to statewide office. And in 2016, he founded Let America Vote, a national campaign against voter suppression and an organization that VoteVets is now proud to be partnering with as part of this year's Save the Vote campaign. Gentlemen, good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Doing great. Thank you, Will.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us for this important roundtable. To get started, we're going to start with just some opening remarks about the election. We'll start with you, General, on why you're supporting Senator Peters and Jason as well. But first, Senator Peters, we'll turn to you to kick us off.
Well, thank you, Will. Thank you for the opening comments, and thank you for hosting this roundtable to talk about work related to helping veterans, making sure we maintain national security in this country as well, and about the election coming up. I just first want to say, Major General Vadnais, thank you for joining us here today. I've had the privilege of working with the General over the years. Certainly appreciate your service, and I'm really glad you're able to join us. I know you are somewhere between Utah and Michigan, and a point not necessarily disclosed for national security reasons, but I know you're going to be home back in Michigan very shortly, and wish you safe travels. And again, just thank you for your incredible service over a very illustrious career. And Jason, great to have you with me as well. And I've gotten to know you and get to know your passion. Thank you for your service, but your passion for veterans and the fact that you're leading this national organization that's gaining so much traction around the country speaks volumes for the need, but it also speaks volumes for your energy to make sure that our veterans are taken care of wherever they may be. So thank you. This is a great group. You know, I have come from a military family, like probably many of us. Service has been in our DNA, and just a little bit about kind of that family history. It goes way back. Actually, before my father passed, we were able to join together into the Sons of the American Revolution. And my ancestor actually goes back to the Revolutionary War. He was part of the Continental Army, served in a regiment, a Virginia regiment, and was with General George Washington at Valley Forge during that very horrible winter that folks were able to endure to keep the American Revolution alive. I've had ancestors that have served in the Civil War. My father is a World War II veteran, served in World War II in Europe, part of Eisenhower's command. And I've had the privilege of serving in the U.S. Navy Reserve, and actually served, rose to the rank of lieutenant commander, and then got out of active drilling status. Then after 9/11 and what happened there, I asked to get back into drilling service to be ready to serve my country if overseas if need be. And that experience I've continued to carry forward in my work in the United States Senate. I serve on 2 committees related to national and homeland security, and so it's always on my mind as going forward. I'm the ranking member, meaning the top Democrat on Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs. So our job is to make sure our borders are secure and we keep the homeland safe. I also serve on the Senate Armed Services Committee, and I'm a ranking member on a subcommittee, which is the Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee. 2 areas of responsibility. One, I oversee all of the nation's special operations forces, so think U.S. Navy SEALs and Delta Force and other special operators, but also oversee all of the advanced research for the Department of Defense. So think hypersonic missiles, artificial intelligence, the work in Michigan, which is particularly important as we do the advanced research for the Department of the Army, the next generation combat vehicle and the future of ground combat is being developed in Michigan. So if you can see with the assignments that I have, I am concerned about homeland security, national security. I like to say I work with the home team and the away team when it comes to keeping us safe every single day. And it's my commitment. And supporting our troops and folks on the homeland security. But I also understand that the most important mission that we have in terms of my work in the U.S. Senate is that we need to keep the men and women who are serving today. But we also have to understand the most important mission is to bring them all home safe, home to their families. And when they come home, make sure that we treat them the way they need to be treated. They're willing to go into harm's way. We need to make sure our veterans are always have the resources they need, job opportunities, healthcare, et cetera. For me, it's a focus of mine that folks who have had our back, we have to make sure we have their back as they come home. And that's why it's great to be on this call. I look forward to taking questions about the work that I do in this area and look forward to having that discussion with our 2 esteemed panelists with me.
Thank you, Senator. General, we'll turn it over to you for some opening remarks now. I'm sorry. I think you're on mute. There you go.
There we go.
There we go.
Technologically challenged, but listen, great. Yeah, Will, thank you for hosting this. Thank you for your service. Jason, great to have an opportunity to meet you, and I want to thank you for the great work that you're doing. And finally, to our great senator, Senator Peters, it is a privilege to be the chair for your campaign for veterans. And I will go to bottom line up front, cut to the quick, and answer that question of why is a retired general out of a Republican administration supporting a Democratic senator. And I would tell you that it comes directly from the experience, the opportunities that I've had to work with Senator Peters in my role as the Adjutant General, not only on Veterans Affairs issues, but DOD issues. I spent a fair amount of time on the Hill and working with our federal legislators, advocating for our soldiers and our airmen, our programs, our veterans. And I can tell you that my experience working with Senator Peters has been tremendous. You know, it's I don't get the Washington humma. We got right into the issues. I would tell you that if I were going to put a label on you, Senator, it would be one term that my boss, Governor Snyder, coined, which is relentless positive action. And you are tenacious in working those issues that you've championed. Positive, you've done it in a bipartisan way, and that's how we get things done, is in a bipartisan way in action. And it's about getting, as I say, getting the football in the end zone. And you have delivered. And I would tell you that I've had the opportunity to come in, bring in senior leadership from other countries, Latvia, Liberia, to do office calls with the senator and give them the opportunity to express their concerns and talk about national security perspectives and how they can working with the United States, how we can support them, the mutual support of our respective countries. and just has done a phenomenal job in building those relationships. Not only has he done the office calls, but he has been into Latvia, he's been into Liberia. So he has that perspective. He's been in the dirt and understands the reality of what's going on in those countries, as well as so many other countries that we have our forces deployed to. So I want to thank him for the numerous bills, the legislation that he has supported. And I want to point to one particular area that I had some experience in my role as the Veterans Affairs Agency, and that is getting claims processed through the VA. That always seemed to be a struggle, and the senator is worked and championed more funding for the federal VA to accelerate that claims process. And I will tell you that it is a complex. There's a lot of information there that needs to be worked. Michigan, and I discovered back in 2014, there's a report put out by the VA, and it tracks how many federal dollars relative to your veteran population a state is executing. In Michigan, I would tell you, we were ranked 52 out of 54. And I would tell you that that dog wasn't going to hunt. We ended up standing up the Veterans Affairs Agency and to try to move the needle and make sure that our veterans are getting access to benefits, getting the monies that are there for them. And again, a key piece of that is the funding piece that Senator Peters has worked. So I just want to say that from my perspective, we need to keep him in office. He's in some very key positions, seasoned leader, balanced, a man of character, data-driven, and at the end of the day, gets things done, gotten the ball in the end zone so many times on so many issues for Michigan. So again, Senator Peters, I'm proud to be part of your team. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now, Jason, over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, General. And Will, thank you for having me. I'm going to pick up where the General left off, which is on some of the legislation that Gary has gotten passed. I'm going to point out a couple that I think are particularly important for veterans. Both of them have something in common, which is that Gary understands that it is not enough for politicians to simply genuflect toward veterans. This thing that we've established as a pattern in American politics, where all you really have to do is utter the words, we have to do these things for veterans because of everything they did for us, really annoys me. And I appreciate that has never been Gary's approach. Gary is one of the rare birds who understands that people who have served in these conflicts, or any conflict, but especially in the unique nature of these most recent conflicts where responsibility is pushed down to the lowest possible level. That's one of the natures of counterinsurgency. He understands that these people have a lot of service left to give. And so Gary doesn't view Michigan's veterans or America's veterans as charity cases. He doesn't view them the way President Trump does, which is as props for parades and captive audiences for political speeches. He views them as people who still have an awful lot of service to give. And he understands that the scarcity of veterans in the modern world where we don't have a draft drives up their value. It makes that skill set that much more important. So a couple pieces of legislation that I would point out are, first, his work to make it easier for veterans to qualify for apprenticeships, to make sure that you can ease that transition from the military to civilian life. And so that they can continue to provide and be active members of their community. I mean, folks who have moved up through union ranks are often the same people who are softball coaches and Cub Scout leaders. And Gary understands that making sure that our veterans have every opportunity to do that, because they will do it so well, is important. And then second, the work that he's done to make it less of an arduous process for veterans to appeal and to change their discharge status. This is something that people don't like to talk about very much, because when folks have an other than honorable discharge, people, shame them. I mean, that's what our society does. It tends to shame people for that. what Gary understands is something that I've certainly come to see in my day job, working with veterans frequently, is that, you know, when somebody got, say, a dishonorable discharge for a couple of DUIs, it is worthwhile to look and see if those DUIs came in between their 3 or 4 combat deployments, and that perhaps there's a reason why they had a drinking problem, for instance. And it's just one example, but I've seen stuff like that a lot in my work with veterans. And what a lot of Americans don't know is that, you know, not everybody we consider veterans are considered veterans by the federal government and have access to benefits. Most people understandably assume that if you wore the uniform, the federal government considers you a veteran and that you have access to the VA. But what those of us on this call know is that that is tragically not true. And the fact that Gary has worked to make sure that people who that people are in a position to change that discharge status so that they can actually get access to those benefits. And frankly, because it's really important when you're trying to make a life, when you're trying to apply for jobs, that people get that opportunity because they've earned it. Those are two things that demonstrate that Gary understands that all of us had dog tags that did not list our political affiliation. And that's why the word bipartisan is thrown around with Gary so much, because he didn't go to the US Senate to be on MSNBC every day. When he's on there, he does a hell of a job, but that's not his deal, right? Gary is there to get stuff done. And that's exactly what he does. And so look, I'm always happy to do everything I can for my friend Gary, because we are in a time right now in our country where those of us who are trying to raise kids, whether we are veterans or not, are unfortunately at a loss for people in leadership who we can point to and say, be like them, right? One of the hardest parts for every American, and there are many, about, you know, having Donald Trump as president, is he just frankly makes it harder to raise kids, because we have to explain away this negative role model all the time. And so every time we have somebody like Gary Peters, who is a good man, who is doing good work, we should do everything we can to retain their services.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, Jason, a couple of the issues that you hit are a great segue into some of the issues that we want to talk about, workforce and employment being one where, you know, we've had a ton of progress in reducing veteran unemployment, making real strides in the last decade. And clearly the pandemic has put everyone's economic certainty, including veterans, at risk. Senator Peters, as Jason mentioned, you've used your time in the Senate to actually focus on expanding workforce and apprenticeship opportunities for veterans, including the bipartisan Support for Veterans and Effective Apprenticeships Act to help more veterans use their GI Bill benefits towards securing a registered apprenticeship. Could you tell us about that measure and your other efforts on veteran unemployment and how you want to continue working on this challenge in your next term?
I'd be happy to, and I appreciate the comments that Jason mentioned about that, and it's true. I mean, if you're an employer, hiring a veteran is a pretty easy decision. If you want someone who you know is disciplined, who will show up to work every day, will work their tail off when they're there, and you can always count on, hire a veteran. I mean, that's what we should be focused on, and make sure that message is out there. But we also make sure that the veterans have the opportunity to get the skills that they need to get these great jobs and to lead a great middle-class life and have a career. And so the area that I'm focused on this broadly beyond veterans as well, is that we need to do more to expand skilled trades and to have folks to have opportunities to get those jobs that don't require a college degree or a 2-year degree, but these are great jobs and are absolutely essential to our economy. We need more folks to have skills like that. And certainly veterans should have every opportunity to do that as well. So I looked at this issue from the terms of veterans who can use their GI Bill benefits to go into apprenticeship programs. You know, many people usually think it's 4-year programs, 2-year programs, and those are great. If folks choose it, that's great. But we need veterans in the skilled trades. That's absolutely essential for our country, and they're going to do an outstanding job doing that. So I was talking to veterans, was amazed that the opportunities that are available in apprenticeship programs aren't necessarily open to all veterans, which is unacceptable. So right now, or I should say prior to the law that I passed and has been signed into law now, is that veterans could go into an apprenticeship program, a registered labor apprenticeship program, But in Michigan, we have over 1,000 registered apprenticeship programs by the Department of Labor that are available to folks that want to get into a wide variety of fields. But in order to use your GI Bill benefits, it had to be approved by the VA. And in Michigan, less than 100 of those programs are actually approved by the VA. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. A veteran should have the full range of opportunities wherever their passion is, whatever their desire is, wherever they want to use their talents. And that's why I built a bipartisan group of folks together. We were able to bring veterans groups together, and we were able to pass legislation that will now allow that veteran to have the full range of opportunities that are available. And the power of the stories is, I talk to veterans. I was just recently up in Saginaw in the pipe fitters union, for example, and met a Marine who said that how this has changed this program, and being able to go into apprenticeship program changed his life. He served for many years in the Marine Corps. But he always wanted to be a pipe fitter, but he didn't know how he could do that. He had a wife and a couple of kids. And when you go into an apprenticeship program, initially the pay is not a lot because you're learning your craft. You eventually get to a great pay. And now using his being able to use the GI Bill to do that, he is so happy and obviously in a career. I saw him just recently again the second time, and he's their star performer. I understand within that apprenticeship class, which is not we'd expect that from a veteran, but it's that kind of common sense stuff that I work on. How do we fix these kinds of problems? And as both the general and Jason mentioned, working in a bipartisan way is the way that I am. I'm a Democrat. I'm a proud Democrat. But we have to find ways to come together to solve these kinds of problems, take off any partisan blinders, and just focus on a problem set as to how we get through that. That's why I'm ranked as one of the most bipartisan Democratic senators. And you get things done just as a sense of, and this is one of the bills that we passed this year. Over the last 2 years in the Senate, I'm in my first term, so I'm a junior guy. And over these last 2 years, I've written and passed more bills through the United States Senate than any other Democratic senator or Republican senator. And I'm in the minority party. So, majority matters and seniority matters. I'm junior and in the minority, and I've written and passed more bills through the U.S. Senate than any other U.S. senator. And if you look at the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency, I've had more of my legislation signed into law than any other Democratic senator. And I'm a junior member. And it's about these kinds of issues that I focus on. How do we come together? How do we really deal with common sense things that aren't getting done in Washington the way they should be? And it's not just veterans, but obviously issues is across the board. And I look forward to continue to working in that way in the next 6 years if reelected. And that's why I certainly need help to make sure we can do that.
Absolutely. And a lot of those issues that you hit on, sir, real focuses for Joe Biden and his campaign about building back a better economy, focusing on good union jobs and rewarding work in this country. Another component, General Vadnais, of caring for those who served is securing their access to health care and benefits. I know you've seen service members under your leadership leave the military and transition into the civilian world and face challenges that are connected to their service, as Jason said, physical, mental health, and others. We'll turn to the policy moment, but can you talk about the importance in the kind of human experience from your time leading men and women in uniform and what that promise, Joe Biden calls it the sacred obligation, means that we need to do for those who have served? I think we got you on mute again there, sir. Let's see. There we go.
Okay, there we go. I will not hit the mute button again. I'm done. I'm done with that one. But great question, and an obvious issue that we continue to work hard. And I had a lot of experience with this, seeing it not only from a uniform perspective in my serving soldiers and airmen, but from a Veterans Affairs agency perspective, and be able to work directly with service members from all services and the challenges that they faced and accessing, the care, the support, everything from mental health to physical problems. And it's a challenge. But I got to tell you that because sometimes much maligned, people go after the VA, I got to tell you, the experience that I've had with them has been, sometimes we have some challenges, but they get constrained by trying to work within the framework of the law and the regulations. And that's where guys like Senator Peters comes in, because sometimes those laws and regulations are antiquated and need amending. And that's the kind of thing that he's gotten after. And, we've worked hard to pick our game up in the state of Michigan by putting money into our VSOs, or veteran service organizations, both at the county level and the different service VSO organizations, so that they've got the training and the tools to better able to process the claims to help the veteran get the access. So it's a work in progress. We're working it hard, and again, appreciate the great work that Senator Peters has done to deal with some of this antiquated legislations and regulations.
Absolutely. And Senator Peters, picking up there, I mean, you've made those challenges front and center in your work, including, I know we want to talk about the recently passed Fairness for Veterans Act. These issues go back, though. You've also fought for Vietnam veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange and waited far too long to receive needed care through the VA. Can you talk about your efforts when it comes to securing healthcare and benefits for veterans in Michigan?
Absolutely, Will, and I'll talk about the Fairness for Veterans Act that I worked on, and picks up from what Jason's comments are. Folks who may have had a bad paper discharge and what that means for their life, and because they haven't been diagnosed properly. People haven't asked those questions, as Jason mentioned, when you're between combat deployments, and then you have a DUI. Why weren't those questions asked? This issue came to me as a result of a veteran from the Grand Rapids area, who was actually a homeless vet on the streets of Grand Rapids. His story is that he served in Afghanistan, like Jason served in Afghanistan. He is a Marine and served with distinction, served with honor, had certification or citations for the work that he did there. But when he came home, things weren't so great. And he started having bouts of depression, started to exhibit many of the classic symptoms of someone suffering from PTSD. And what he did is what folks often do, is they self-medicate, either with drinking or taking other types of substances. That's what he did. He ended up testing positive on a drug test, and was discharged from the Marine Corps with a less than honorable discharge, a bad paper discharge. And that's where he ended up then, lost in life, having lots of issues. That's where he ended up, homeless. So then he went to the VA. Here he is, homeless. He went to the VA. The VA then evaluated him. As General mentioned, the VA is outstanding in so many ways, and particularly when it comes to the invisible wounds of war. And they said, well, you're suffering from PTSD. And this PTSD is clearly related to your service in Afghanistan. But we can't help you because you have a bad paper discharge. I mean, imagine hearing that. I mean, it's just horrific. And we took up that case. As I took it up, we learned more and more folks were in this situation. Talked to more veterans. You're talking about thousands of vets that were not diagnosed for the issues that they had. And so I went to work. We pulled a coalition. All the major veterans groups all came together. I worked in a bipartisan way, as I do, which I mentioned, bringing some Republicans together. And we had to fight some of the stigma. Jason mentioned the stigma associated with that. Is why are we helping folks with bad paper discharges? We're helping them because they should have never gotten that. We're helping them because it should have been diagnosed before they were left. We're helping them because it is the absolute right thing to do. And we were able to build more support for it, and we've got it passed into law. And so now veterans who are in that situation can go, and if they have credible medical evidence that they're suffering from PTSD, can appeal to the board, and in the most generous review of that paperwork can have their discharge changed to honorable, and can get the treatment that they've earned and they certainly deserve. We're working now to make sure veterans understand that this is an opportunity. Many people don't. The most recent numbers that we have seen is that over 1,500 veterans have now gone through that process and are now getting the treatment that they have earned and need to be able to get on with their life and to move forward. But we believe that we're talking about tens of thousands of folks that are in that range, is some of the estimates that the veterans groups have provided to me. So that means we've got to do more outreach. We've got to make sure folks know. And so I would encourage anybody on this call here, if you know somebody in that situation, please let them know there is an avenue for assistance.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jason, I was going to turn to you because you're a national leader. People look to you on these issues. Could you talk about, pick up where the senator left off on the work?
Sure. One thing I just want to point out is that in nothing that Gary just said did he do what a lot of politicians in both parties do, which is take the opportunity to use the VA as a punching bag. The fact that's like one of the easiest things that politicians do. Politicians who have really no experience with the VA and know very little about it just say, oh, well, you know about the VA. And the problem with that, and what Gary clearly knows, and why Gary never does it, is because every time somebody with a microphone and a large platform does that, it just drives home the message to more veterans that the VA won't be able to help them. And it causes more people not to even go. And then on top of that, when they do go, they traditionally have run into too many obstacles that are not created by people at the VA. Just as the general said, the people at the VA provide some of the best dang customer service that is possible given their constraints of anywhere in the country. I have been getting pretty much all of my medical care from the VA for the last 2 years. And everybody that I have dealt with, whether they are part of the call center or a clinician, it doesn't matter. Everybody seems to have the attitude of they are very fortunate to have the opportunity to serve veterans, and they're excited about it. Now, there are regulatory problems. There are constraints that are put on them. There are funding constraints. And these things come out of Washington, and Gary Peters is one of the people there clearing the way for those. But what he's not doing is he's not scoring political points by bad-mouthing the VA because he knows that it's not productive, and he actually cares about that. He is a senator who is interested in adding value, not adding points to his poll numbers all the time. And that's enormously important. For me personally, I almost exactly 2 years ago went to the VA to get help for, at that point, what had been 11 years of untreated, undiagnosed post-traumatic stress from my service in Afghanistan. When I arrived at the VA, I found that there were some bureaucratic obstacles, not caused by anybody at the VA, caused by problems, in Washington, administrators, right? Now, I am none of the things that Gary described in his example, right? I'm not homeless. I didn't have a substance abuse problem. In fact, I was the opposite. I have a phone full of influential contacts. I have people like Gary Peters in my phone. I have, I have high-level government experience. I have a law degree from Georgetown. And I found the process, given the state I was in, really difficult. And I had to turn to an organization that I now lead to help me expedite that process. My point is that if it was that difficult for me, who could not have possibly been in a position better for accessing those benefits, imagine how incredibly discouraging it is for somebody who has a discharge that is a bad paper discharge that, by the way, is like, a scarlet letter that they wear around. It gets that much further out on the horizon to actually get help. And so it is not an exaggeration by any means to say that the 1,500 people who have already taken advantage of the law that Gary passed and the thousands more who will, those are quite literally lives that have been saved. Because if you need that help and you don't get it, unfortunately, a large percentage of those people, they won't live through that. And had I not gotten the help, I don't know that I would have lived through it. So it is an enormously big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, General, I want to go back to you because part of this, we've talked about the different levels of this. There's state efforts, there's local efforts, there are groups like the one Jason leads, there's the federal government. I've worked in the Senate. I've seen this firsthand, that the relationship between the TAG and the senators from a state is really important to making that all work. You gave us a couple examples of how Senator Peters has worked to keep the Michigan Guard strong and ready. Could you speak a little bit about what it was like to work with him and his leadership when it comes to taking care of the Michigan Guard?
Yeah, no, great question. And there have been a number of instances, everything from support to re-winging our A-10s, and the Air Force was trying to kill the A-10 program. We kept it alive. They're still flying today. Probably the best close air support aircraft there is the A-10. And they were in dire need of re-winging. I think that was a $60 million program, and the senator was key in working with us to get that. He's been a great supporter of, we just stood up a cyber unit. We stood up a remotely piloted RPA unit. And again, the senator was involved with all of that. And, just working hand in hand with us to make sure that we're getting the support from Department of Defense, or from a veterans perspective, the monies we need. We built a new veterans homes being built in Chesterfield Township. He was key and instrumental in working with us to secure that funding. So once again, it takes a bipartisan effort to get these things done. And Senator Peters has been successful. And as I said before, it's about getting the ball in the end zone. It's about getting it done. And he's that guy. He's that guy who gets it done. And we greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk about COVID as our last kind of topic, obviously hanging over this entire election. I think we'll start, Jason, with you and then go back to the senator. From your experience on the ground working with veterans, and also having served at the state level and knowing the bind that a lot of local and state governments are in right now, what are the issues that you're seeing emerge, and how dire is the situation right now?
I think one of the most important issues here is just a sense of urgency, and not a sense of, I want to say, complacency, right? I mean, we've gotten to a point where those leading the federal government, from the executive side, seem to have thrown up their hands. And this is, I don't think this is a partisan statement at all, right? I mean, emergency and crisis response doesn't have a partisan affiliation. Democratic politicians in the past have done it poorly. Republican politicians in the past have done it poorly. And some on both sides have done it really well. Right now, the people running the federal government from the executive side are doing it very poorly. And when you have people like Gary Peters, who, by the way, again, is not spending all his time just criticizing them, he's proposing legislation to make it better. He's proposing things that we can do to make testing more available. That's the kind of leadership we need. We need people who are interested during a crisis, and that's what this is, in adding value, not scoring points. And that's what Gary's been doing on this issue and a host of others.
Absolutely. And Senator, you've been working throughout this crisis to provide relief for veterans and all Michiganders, including free testing, small business relief, expanded unemployment benefits, and funding for hospitals. Can you talk about COVID's impact on Michigan right now and your work to deliver real relief for the state?
Well, just like every state, this crisis has been devastating to folks, and it's lasting a whole lot longer than any of us would like, and we need to have steady leadership to get us through. There's no question this is a simultaneous public health crisis and economic crisis, and we have to deal with both simultaneously, but we also have to understand that fundamentally it is a health crisis first and foremost. It's very difficult to fix the economic parts until we deal with the health aspects of it. I've been intimately involved in it in my role as the ranking member on Homeland Security Committee. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management folks that are spearheading the response from a national perspective are within that department. So I've been working closely with them, and it has been a challenge with this administration in the lack of the kind of national coordinated strategy necessary. We were in the middle of really tough time in Michigan. We were one of the first hotspots. We were right there with New York and New Jersey and Southeast Michigan in particular, and Detroit. The disproportionate impact on Detroit too was stunning. The communities of color were hit very hard. And we needed to make sure we were focusing resources on those that were being hit the hardest. And that means having, as you mentioned, the testing supplies, to have the personal protection equipment provided, and not do what we saw from this president. One, who he acted was too slow. You need to be aggressive right up front. We remember him saying it was going to disappear, and we not to worry about the long term, even though evidence was becoming clearer and clearer. And the one thing we know is that if you are not aggressive in dealing with a virus and you let the virus get ahead of you, it's really hard to catch up. You know, virus expands exponentially. Once that's off on a runway, it's tough. You've got to lean in aggressively, and to see how this administration handled, especially those early times when they were literally pitting states against each other. I was working closely with Governor Whitmer and the team, and we were trying to acquire personal protection equipment. The state would go put in orders, and then another state would come in and outbid us. It's crazy that you have states outbidding each other for protection equipment when you have a national crisis. You know, I've working with FEMA over the years. Let's use an example of a hurricane. When a hurricane comes in and hits a region, FEMA's not asking what state you're in. They will say, where are people hurt? Who needs shelter? Who needs food? How do we provide assistance and get it done? Bring their checkbook, make sure resources are available. But they didn't do that to the extent they should have in this crisis. And basically, we had a hurricane that hit the whole country. It should have been done the same way, and that kind of broad, comprehensive approach. So we need to change that going forward. We need steady leadership. That's why I support Joe Biden, whose lead has really put forward the kind of comprehensive plan you'd expect from a president, and the kind of leadership that's going to be necessary to do that. And have the resources. But I'll mention one thing that is a big takeaway for me, and what I will focus on in the next 6 years in this next term, is lessons learned. Because unfortunately, pandemics will happen again. Hopefully not for a long time, but they're part of human history. One of the lessons learned is our supply chain issues that have to be grappled with. And I'll say I put out a report last year as the ranking member. I had my committee staff put together a report. On that time, we were focused on drug shortages, that we have significant shortages of key drugs in this country on a regular basis, which makes no sense. I mean, you have hospitals that every week have to figure out which drugs might be in shortage that week, and how do they make up for the shortfall. And usually the drugs they pick aren't to fill that gap, are not clinically as effective and cost more. But that goes across all other medical supplies too, like surgical masks and things. And yet what we found is that we are overly dependent on foreign sources for critical medical supplies. And that's unacceptable from a homeland security issue. And I'll use an example from the Department of Defense. I'm intimately involved in this issue as well, especially with Michigan as the arsenal of democracy and our industrial supply base. We make sure we make things in the United States and are not dependent on foreign governments when it comes to our national security for the Department of Defense. The example I love to tell folks as a former U.S. Naval Reserve officer is that we do not, nor should we ever, and in fact, we must never buy U.S. Navy warships from China. That makes no sense to buy our warships from China. We make sure we have shipyards in America, and we make sure we have highly skilled folks who've gone through those apprenticeship programs and highly skilled people who can make ships. In Michigan, we have, it's in Wisconsin, but it's just across the border from Michigan. We have a shipyard that makes the littoral combat ship for the U.S. Navy, and those are Michiganders that are working to do it, and we make it here. We have to look at critical medical supplies as a national security issue. And that means we make the precursors that go into drugs. We have to make them in the United States. We have to make sure we have surgical masks and gowns that we make in the United States. In this testing crisis, one of the weak links was just the cotton swabs that people use to test. Only one company in America made those. We had to go to the Chinese and everybody else. And guess what? Everybody in the world was going to those, trying to get those supplies too. It put us at risk as a country. And so we need to focus on resiliency. It's not enough just to have efficient supply chains. We have to have resiliency, and that means making it in America. And what that means, not only are we more secure as a country, we're creating really good paying jobs in this country. This is about our economic strength too. And we know national security is premised certainly on a strong military, but it's a strong economy, and it's president also having allies around the world. But we need to be focused on that. So that is something that I think is a priority. And when reelected with the help of VoteVets and folks across Michigan, and when we take the majority in the Senate, which is very real, and why Michigan is at the center of that, as chair, it'll be one of my main focus. To me, this is a homeland security issue and absolutely critical for our national security.
Absolutely, sir. I think that's a great way to close out our discussion on all of the issues. There are a lot of big challenges ahead. But it all depends on sending you back to Washington, Joe Biden to the White House, and other leaders who share these values. I know we're short on time. I want to keep the senator and everyone here on their schedule, but let's go around real quick, 30, 60 seconds each, Jason and General, on why it's important to get engaged and help actually take some action if you're watching at home to support Senator Peters in this race.
Well, look, I think everybody at this point has to have been persuaded during this call. So I'm going to jump right to just throwing it back to you, Will. Like, can we give these people some links? Like, how can they give some money to Gary's campaign and give some time to Gary's campaign? Where do they go, Gary or Will? Like, I yield the floor for that purpose.
Well, I'll take part of that. Obviously, Jason, we do need support. Right now, we've got massive money coming in against us from the Mitch McConnell's super PAC. I think right now they put in over $9 million of negative false attack ads. And you're aware of false negative attack ads. You know what that's like to be bombarded, basically carpet bombing. And it's interesting, these ads are all the fact checkers have said, they've said they're false, they're demonstrably false, they're smears. Think of more words. That's what's going against me. And we've got to rise up. And in fact, it's interesting. One of the Republican operatives was quoted in a story about all these negative false ads against me. And his quote was really striking. His quote was, "It doesn't matter if they're true. It only matters if they stick." That's what I have to deal with. They aren't even trying to defend what they're putting on the air. They're just throwing mud and hoping it sticks, even though there's no truth to it. So we need to push back. I need the resources. I would hope that people would consider giving. My website is petersformichigan.com, petersformichigan.com. And go online and contribute, then we'll be able to push back against this flood of outside dark money that's coming against us. So.
Absolutely. And General, your thoughts to rally the veterans watching who want to get involved and help the senator?
Yeah, so thanks. And Jason, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed your comments and your thought and the great work that you're doing. And I think that Senator Peters, for those listening this past hour, has just done a great job of articulating in detail the work, his accomplishments, the ongoing efforts, and it speaks for itself. And I will end as I started. This man, relentless positive action, that's what he is about. He's about getting it done, doing the right thing, does the harder right than the easier wrong. And I appreciate his service. I appreciate his service in the Senate, and we damn near need to keep him in doing what he's doing for the state of Michigan and this great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, General.
Thank you. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us and for the conversation today, Senator, for your leadership. And to everyone watching, thanks for your support of VoteVets and leaders like Gary Peters. Service has always been a part of the senator's DNA, as you heard today. There are 25 days left until Election Day, and we have to step up and help Senator Peters win. We need his leadership in Washington, and here's what you and I can do to help at home. Volunteer. You can sign up to volunteer and help us win this thing at Peters for Michigan, formichigan.com/volunteer. We can make calls, send text messages, amplified content on Twitter and Facebook, write and send letters to the editor. Donate as well if you can chip in a few dollars, the cost of a cup of coffee this weekend on Senator Peters' website. Again, petersformichigan.com. And finally, make a plan to vote. Early voting just started in Michigan, so it's critical that we encourage people to vote for Gary and drop their ballots off. It's easy and convenient to vote early this year, either by mail or in person, and you can make a plan that's flexible to fit your schedule. Once you know how you're going to vote, you also have to make sure that your friends and family have a plan in place as well. And one last time, here are key dates for voting in Michigan this year. October 20th is the recommended last day to mail in your absentee ballot in Michigan. November 2nd is the date when early in-person voting ends at 4:00 p.m. And on November 3rd, polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. across the great state of Michigan. Go to petersformichigan.com and get involved today so we can win this thing. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Senator Jason. I think the General just dipped. It's nice to see you both, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Thank you.
See ya.